curiosity on overdrive. You feel a need for something, and it's coming alive. The moment is rising like you hoped it would. Who knew a tangent could feel so good? Let her take you on another tangent, turn a thought into a whole new planet. She'll make your sense of wonder feel gigantic. Ember lights the way like magic. You arrived to learn the facts, but you stayed for her glow. You heard her musical laugh, and her quick wit stole the show. The moment is rising like you hoped it would. Who knew a tangent could feel so good? Let her take you on another tangent, turn an idea into a whole new planet. She can piece the universe from fragments. Ember lights the dark like magic. Who knew a detour could hit like this? Smart mouth, star maps, and a sideways twist. No religion, just a mind on fire, taking us higher and higher and higher. Let her take you on another tangent, turn a thought into a whole new planet. She'll make your sense of wonder feel gigantic. Ember lights the way like magic.
Hello, everyone. Happy Trans Day of Visibility. Can you see me now? Because I can turn the invisibility on and off now. It's a neat trick. Thank you all so much for joining. There's a lot going on. We're not going to get to all of the things going on. There is far too much. Instead, I want to focus on some areas of interest and some areas of import and some areas of hope. And in that respect, I hope to do some good today. First, a starter, a primer for those of you joining for the first time. My name is Ember. I am an intersex woman of transgender experience. I do this show when I have both the availability and the regular ability, because I'm also disabled due to injuries I sustained because of transphobia. The world kind of sucks for us right now, but I'm still visible because somebody has to be. When I was young, I felt like I was the only person who was like me. It took me until I was in my 40s before I met other people like me in one way or another and started to find community. It is vital that those of us who can be visible do so. So that's why we're here. So thank you all so much for joining. We are simulcasting. We're doing both the horizontal and the vertical, like the old Twilight Zone, or was it Outer Limits? Either way, we're doing the thing. Also, I want to take a second to note that I have to wear a ribbon on my dress now. Oh, it doesn't show. I have to turn off the background to do it, and I'm not going to do that right now. I have to wear a ribbon because this thing is so freaking big. In 2020, I couldn't even put it on. And not related to anything. It just tickles me. My goodness. Okay. So first I want to start with a statement, a position, if you will, partly inspired by some recent bigoty activity and partly inspired by some other things that have been kicking around in the zeitgeist. A lot of people have been saying, well, intersex isn't a third sex. That's true, because there aren't two sexes to begin with. And that's the point. That's the reason people like to play political football with intersex people. And that kind of pisses me off because I've got transphobes telling me I'm not really trans, even though intersex is it's a status, it's a thing, it's a place to begin, right? Like my documents at birth had an F on them because there's only the option of M or F. It's circular. It's a self-fulfilling prophecy that you have to be one or the other because they only allow one or the other on the documents. Holy shit. We're not a third sex because there are the two in the first place. This idea of whatever characteristic people throw out there, whether it's chromosomes, those aren't only one or the other, or hormones, those aren't only one or the other. Fun fact, everyone has both. Or gametes that you produce, those aren't one or the other either, because some people produce neither and some people produce both. Ask me how I know. Or if you just want to look it up for yourself, I keep research on my website at betterthanember.com on the gender sci tab. There's a fuck ton of studies. Knock yourself out. And feel free to use those studies to show other people who are being ignorant assholes what's what. That's what they're there for. It's not just my cheat sheet. It's there for everyone. We're not called intersex because we produce intergametes. We're called intersex because there's more than just gametes. There's a whole suite of traits and characteristics that go into sex determination, and everyone is in a different place on a spectrum. Some of the traits we associate with males and some we associate with females, but that's our categorization system. Nature is under no obligation to fit itself into our model. And many of those characteristics can change. In fact, they do change over the course of every single person's life. A cis woman starts out as a cis girl, goes through hormonal changes, and then experiences changes in her reproductive system and her secondary sex characteristics. The same thing for cis men in the other direction. Every single adult today, from a certain point of view, could be considered trans because they've gone through hormonal and anatomical changes over the course of their life. Trans is as valid as any identity. Man, woman, hydra, two-spirit, whatever you've got, whatever system you come from, whatever culture you understand. Trans is older than that. The words we use are new, but the identities we're describing have been with humanity longer than we've had history. What we're doing today is cruelty for the purpose of cruelty. Before we get into our first thingy, I want to thank Kelly King, Detroit Atheist Queen 24/7, sending a $5 super chat to say, I'm loving your dress. Thank you. I designed it myself way back in the dim and misty when I was still hiding as a non-binary egg. It doesn't fit me anymore because I've shrunk, but so I designed it in 2020. The plague happened. Everything got delayed. Shipping took forever. And I was very, very ill. And while I was very, very ill, I gained a whole lot of weight. So by the time it arrived, I couldn't fit into it. Now I could fit two of me in this thing and have room to spare. We'd have me and other me would have room to dance. But I do like the design. The vertical stripe thing, you don't see it ever. Everything with the trans flag is horizontal, including the trans flag behind me. I've got it displayed vertically, but if you want to pick up your own copy, you can do that at astralpride.com. I have trans flags, I have gay flags, I have lesbian flags, I have bi flags, I have pan flags, I have the genderqueer flag, every kind of flag, including the main pride flag. One of these, but space flavored. Astralpride.com. Giant flags, big stickers, whatever you're into. And that helps support what I'm trying to do. That helps me stay alive. So, check that out when you have the opportunity. Sapphire says Ember should have been assigned badass at birth. Oh my goodness. If only. All right. So I am going to be taking questions over the course of this show. I'm aiming for 2 hours, but no promises. And right, I'm going to try to cover things in a certain order. Super chat questions will take priority. Other questions, if I can fit them in, and they seem to be of good faith. And other than that, if you're new here, take a second to hit the subscribe button. I'm here as often as I can. I do a deep dive show as often as I can, and there's other stuff on this channel besides. So stick around, learn some things, and join the coolest, vibiest community around. All right. With all that said, first thing first. These motherfuckers. So recently, the UK organization Girl Guiding was forced by lawyers, by threats of legal action, to kick out kids. And these two were celebrating the fact because their organization led the charge to make that happen. For anybody who doesn't know, this critter is Maya Forstater. She became infamous in the UK for getting fired for declaring that sex is real, except that's not actually what happened. She worked on a contract job at a place with a trans employee. She relentlessly harassed her coworker the entire time she was there. Her contract was not renewed. They did not even fire her for her gross misconduct. They just did not renew her contract because she harassed coworkers. For that horrible crime, she sued, and being the UK, she apparently won, and with her money and donations from the Heritage Foundation and Robert Galbraith Rowling, founded her organization Sex Matters, where she hired this person, Helen Joyce, former mathematician who, for some reason, has decided that trans people are the devil and need to be eradicated and all of that stuff. Helen is a bit of an anomaly. She doesn't come to her beliefs by way of some superstition or mythology. She declares herself an atheist, although she does believe in something akin to gendered souls, whatever that means. But her main issue seems to be the conspiracy theory, the Great Replacement, you might say. She wrote a book called Trans, because she knows nothing about trans people. So of course she wrote a book about it. Being a mathematician, she's an expert in things she doesn't know about, I guess. And on page 197 of her book, she said that trans is how did she phrase it? Something along the lines of mind virus. It's been a while since I looked it up. But ultimately, it's the Jews behind it. She just puts right on her book, the Jews are trying to sterilize the little white boys and little white girls. And somehow they've convinced them all to sterilize themselves by being fabulous. Conspiracy thinking. So that's the background on these two. They run this organization. It's Maya's organization. Helen is their communications director, something like that. She's constantly on podcasts and things. They're celebrating the harm they have caused to children. As horrible as that is, I think we may have hit peak cruelty, because often they will preface their bigotry and their hatred for minority women by saying we need to protect women and girls from dangerous predators. These are children. Girl guides are for children. In what universe is a 7-year-old girl a dangerous predator? And they're celebrating the harm they have done to children. On a happier note, Sapphire sends us a super chat for $2. Thank you, Sapphire. And says, where did you get those gorgeous earrings? I can't actually remember. I've had them for a couple of years. Let me see if this says. I still have the thingy they came in. It doesn't actually say. There's an ISBN number and a made in China, which is super helpful. I know. I will say probably Amazon, but I don't actually know. But thank you for asking. Maya Adkisson is here, a good Maya. Says showing up to represent good Mayas. That Maya's trash. Thinking of having her kicked out of Mayadom. That seems wise. Yes, not all Mayas. Absolutely. All right, so enough with these two for the time being. I want to get to a happier story, which is this one. A trans man saved a baby in the middle of winter. So this one, it's kicked around a little bit. It's just over a month old, actually, but less than a month ago, we were still in winter. A transgender comedian became a Chicago hero last week when the story was written by diving into the near freezing waters of Lake Michigan to save a baby's life. Leo Cundiff, age 30, was on a phone call in Belmont Harbor on February 18th when he saw the wind blow a baby stroller into the lake. He told the Chicago Tribune in an interview this week. Winds gusted up to 50 miles an hour. The water temperature in Lake Michigan was estimated in the mid-30s, according to the National Weather Service data compiled by the Tribune. He jumped into the lake instinctively after hearing the child's mother scream. He told ABC affiliate WSL-TV, quote, "I can tell she was too panicked to do anything. So I was like, I guess I'm jumping in," he told the network. I wasn't going to let that baby die. Now, this is an interesting thing because he's a comedian. In this busy harbor with people going left and right and center, the mother was paralyzed with fear. Makes sense. People shock. It happens. It's unfortunate, but it happens. All the other men, all the other women, only the trans person acts to actually save the child. It's symbolically powerful, Early reports about the rescue indicated that Cundiff could not swim, but he told the Advocate that was based on a self-deprecating remark he had told a reporter, because he's a comedian. After diving in, he said he treaded water for at least 3 to 4 minutes, trying to keep himself and the child's head above water in the near-freezing lake. One onlooker tossed down the arm of his Chicago Cubs jacket for Cundiff to hang on to until another person located a life preserver, after which he and the baby were pulled from the lake, according to the Sun-Times, which is, a decent newspaper to work for, if you can manage it. But that's a story for another time. So people did work together, and that's a wonderful thing. When people come together, when there's a crisis, when there's a problem, people just come out of the woodwork, and they don't care if you're black or brown or white or gray. They don't care if you're male or female or even a trans comedian. They don't even care if you're from Boston. They just help. Because when it matters, when nobody's gesturing, blowing dog whistles, waving flags, virtue signaling, most people are just people. It takes the politicians to force a division between us. It takes the people on the pulpits telling you that another kind of person is wrong and you should be hateful, that your God commands you to be hateful. It takes other people to indoctrinate hate. It does not come to us naturally. So he set up a GoFundMe to cover medical bills and missed wages, and raised more than double his $30,000 goal at the time of writing back in February. And that's really nice to see. Even knowing he was, I mean, how initial stories didn't even mention he was trans, because it shouldn't matter. But the fact there's so much negative, so much hatred, so much division, so much polarization aimed against us, the fact that he's trans really, really matters. Bit more of a negative side to things. These are stories I've saved up for a little while, so some of them are almost a month old, some of them are newer. We'll go through them in an order that seems to make sense. So this is from The Advocate. Many alleged suicides of Black trans women are, in fact, modern-day lynchings, a report finds. Jill Colleen Jefferson, founder of Julian, explains what happens when a transgender woman's death is ruled a suicide and a community calls it something else. This is the National Memorial for Peace and Justice in Montgomery, Alabama. It documents and memorializes the more than 4,400 victims of lynchings in the United States from 1877 to 1930, 1950. It's hard to read on my screen. It's very tiny. I have a very small screen. I'm doing my best, folks. If you want to help, there's a lot of things on my list that come before a better monitor, such as food and medicine and, you know, other things so I don't die. But if you want to help, scrolling up above and on the vertical stream down below, there's my Venmo and my Cash App. Those are good ways to help. Those are very helpful. So if you want to, that would be much appreciated. Oh my goodness. All right, I'm switching screens real quick to make sure everything is actually working. Oh, because doing double streams, sometimes there's a conflict. YouTube does not like it when you do double streams. It really does not like it because it confuses it. And so it limits the reach of both kinds of streams. But I wanted to have both out there so people using either kind of device have the opportunity to participate in the way they so choose. YouTube very much favors vertical streams. It's ridiculous. Like literally, today's show had 10 times the viewers yesterday's show did, the morning show that I do, because one was vertical and one was horizontal. But doing both at once, it just, the algorithm goes nuts and it makes everything wonky. But today is important. So I wanted to make sure this was as available as I could make it to as many people as possible, even though that makes the algorithm not show it to people. Details. Hey, if you're new here, take a second and hit that subscribe button. It does help. Ay. All right, continuing on. I have too many windows open. What else is new? A new report is raising questions. This is from earlier in March. A new report is raising questions about how U.S. law enforcement agencies across the South classify the deaths of transgender women, arguing that some cases ruled suicides may warrant deeper scrutiny. I don't know how to close this freaking ad box. There isn't an X for it. That's very rude. Maybe if I, no, there's no side scrolly thing. There should be, but there isn't. Nope. Oh well, we'll just have to deal with it. This isn't exclusively a Southern problem. There have been a number of trans people killed in the state where I live, New York State, where they just get ruled a suicide. That may be one of the reasons why the suicide rate is considered to be so high. It's not actually suicides all the time, but that's a topic for another time. In this case, oh, everything's bouncing around on me. Why? There's a lot of ads. The story in too many Southern towns begins with speed. A body is found. Authorities announce no foul play. A ruling is entered. The case, advocates argue, is closed before it's ever even truly opened. Jill Colleen Jefferson has spent years in the gap between what official records say and what families believe happened. The founder of social justice organization Julian, she has reviewed hundreds of deaths across 7 Southern states, and her conclusion is unsparing. A pattern of deliberate misclassification is concealing bias-motivated killings of transgender women. These killings, she argues, are by any honest accounting modern-day lynchings. Now, it should be noted, they are still doing lynchings in the South. There were a couple this past month that actually made it into the news. For the most part, they're like school shootings, they're just ignored. Unless you live in the town where it happened, you never hear about it. The news mutes it. Because we live in a country controlled by, let's call it state media. It's the oligarchy. It's the kakistocracy. It's not directly the executive branch that controls everything, but let's say that their interests are aligned with a certain island. So yeah, it is still happening. It has never stopped happening. But now there's another excuse. Julian's new A Crimson Record, 7-state modern-day lynching report 2000 to 2025 catalogs more than 150 deaths across Mississippi, Texas, Georgia, Louisiana, Florida, Tennessee, and Alabama. More than 50, or roughly 1/3 of the cases, involve transgender women. Now that is somewhat remarkable. Of the 150 cases that she looked into that seem to be modern-day lynchings, 1/3 of them are trans women, Black trans women. Considering we make up somewhere between 1% and 2% of the population to make up 1/3 of the sample that she was able to investigate. So here we've got these are modern-day lynchings, hate crimes, and suspicious deaths compiled by Julian. The red dots are modern-day lynchings. The blue dots are suspicious deaths and notable hate crimes. I wonder what makes a notable hate crime in this context. Because, like, lynching person for racial reasons is definitely a notable hate crime. In any case, the proportion stands out when placed against federal hate crime data. According to the FBI's Crime Data Explorer, there have been 2,726 anti-transgender hate crime incidents nationwide from January 2000 through February 2026, totaling 3,076 offenses. It should be noted that number is a severe undercount because, as many of you know, I used to do a trans news show. We often reported on people who had, shall we say, negative experiences with law enforcement. None of those got counted as anti-trans hate crimes. Every person I know who has experienced an anti-trans hate crime has, to none of our knowledge, ever been entered into a federal level database about the incident. That doesn't mean it didn't happen, but it's not a great look, you know? So where are they getting this data? Because they're missing a whole lot of data. If you look at, for example, the 2025 Transgender Survey, compiled, I think it was by the CDC. I could be mistaken on that one. Link to that also on the website, betterthanember.com, if you want to look. The survey, the largest survey ever done of trans people, showed that something like 80% of us have experienced motivated harassment, possibly not rising to the level of a hate crime, depending on the state you're in, but a crime that involved hate based on bigotry, shall we say. So there's that. LGBTQ plus victims overall account for roughly 17% of reported hate crime victims nationally. Jefferson argues that transgender women's overrepresentation in her Southern dataset reflects the intersection of racism and transphobia in regions historically shaped by racial terror. Imagine that. This has been true virtually forever. When you have one group who people in their area do not value their lives, such as Black people in the South, and you have another group whose lives are not only not valued, but you're considered an abomination by fundamentalists and fanatics, and you put the two together, your chances of getting hate crimed exponentially increase. Even those federal figures come with caveats. Hate crime reporting is voluntary under the FBI's Uniform Crime Reporting System. The best way to get data is to make it voluntary and then not tell people that they can opt in. Yes. Participation varies by agency. Okay, so it's contributing agency. So it's the agencies committing the hate crimes that have to report to the FBI that they have committed hate crimes. Gotcha. The result is a statistical landscape that is both incomplete and periodically paused. Jefferson contends that what cannot be fully counted can be more easily dismissed. And that's true, unless you're a New Testament scholar, apparently. But that's a whole other thing. And then it seems to go into related stories and then resuming the story. In one case, that of Willie Andrew Jones Jr., the first case Julian says it helped solve, authorities ruled the death a suicide within 40 minutes of arriving on the scene. Quote, they didn't interview the people who were in the house that night until 4 days later, Jefferson said. So they had 4 whole days to get their story together. During the Reconstruction era, documented by journalist Ida B. Wells, lynchings were routinely recorded as suicides, a designation, Jefferson said, that shielded perpetrators from neutralized outrage. Jefferson argues that the reflex persists, adapted to contemporary conditions. Back in the day, a lynching was called a suicide, with a wink and a smile, she said. In the present day, they're still called suicides, but now people take that seriously. What makes these cases particularly resistant to justice, she argues, is structural. Lynchings are different than other hate crimes in that you have to disprove one thing before you can actually prove what it is. I don't think that's unique to lynchings. I'm thinking of a couple of the trans people who have been murdered in the area around me, which were then ruled a suicide. Similar situation. You have to prove it isn't a suicide before you can even begin to show what actually happened. Maya says the LGBT prejudice in the Black community is unparalleled to any other. Have a member of the family identify as anything other than cishet will absolutely bring shame to most families. It's crazy and not something we seem to be doing anything about. It's true for a lot of segments of society. It's extremely damaging in the Black community because the Black community is already so stressed and already under so much threat. But a very similar situation obtains in the UK. If you talk to trans kids in the UK today, you'll find out that many of them have a situation where parents are more worried about what other people think, what the neighbors think, what the pastor thinks, what the teachers at school think, than about how their child feels. Mine Finished Sock says, don't sweep hate crimes under the rug. Like and share the stream instead. Yes, do please push the buttons. It helps, especially considering the algorithm will not show me to anyone who doesn't come here voluntarily. Please use that share button. It makes a big difference. She explained that family cannot argue bias until they have first overturned an existing official classification, a high bar made higher by the investigative failures that produced the classification in the first place. It's like taking a bad photograph, Jefferson said, recounting what an FBI agent once told her. If you mess it up in the beginning, there's really no way to go back and fix it. I beg to differ, but fixing things in post does require a lot more work and should be avoided if at all possible. The landscape these claims enter is genuinely complicated. One moment, I'm going to turn off this virtual background because it's driving me crazy. I love having the trans pride flag behind me, but the fact my hat keeps flickering in and out is driving me nuts. So we're gonna we're gonna go back to the void for the rest of this show. Okay. A 2025 commentary in mental health science by researchers at the George Washington University found that 59% of Black, trans, and non-binary youth reported active suicidal ideation in 2023, and 26% reported a past year attempt, rates significantly higher than among their cisgender Black LGBTQ plus peers. So the LGBTQ plus peers. The authors link these disparities to compounding stressors like racism, discrimination, and anti-GSM legislation, violence, and inadequate mental health infrastructure for this population. In short, everything sucks, and the government is doing its level best to make things worse. Amazing. Jefferson does not dispute any of that. Her argument is narrower, that documented vulnerability should not be used as a substitute for actual investigation, saying, hey, there's a high chance of self-harm, therefore it is self-harm, is not investigation. And to be clear, for anybody watching this in the future, I have fought extremely hard to not die. Harder than I thought I could fight. If something unfortunate does happen to me, it wasn't me that chose it. I'm just putting that on record, just so y'all know. You still have the situation where there's a deliberate effort to find another reason, other than the obvious reason that's right in front of you, to name this something else. Call it gang activity, call it a robbery, in some cases, erotic asphyxiation. The alternative explanation changes. The function, she argues, remains the same. And I believe that's the end of that story. Yeah, it just links onto other different things, which, that's fair. The issue is, of course, we still have all the social problems we've always had. Nobody's doing anything about any of them. And now we're adding hatred of trans people on top of it. And to be fair, that's always been there to some extent too. Marsha P. Johnson was not the first or last Black trans woman to be killed for being a Black trans woman. But things are definitely getting worse. Helping that along, oh look, it's Riley, everyone's favorite career 5th place swimmer. Riley Gaines has been claiming, she's been claiming a lot of things over the years, but recently she's been claiming extra hard in a paid advertisement, by the way, that people have silenced her. And it seems that people are pretty sick of her shit. Anti-trans activist Riley Gaines just tried to claim that trans people silenced her. In a new video, former NCAA swimmer turned MAGA conspiracy pundit Riley Gaines claims that she was silenced by LGBTQ plus activists and that her future career in dentistry was derailed. This is from yesterday, incidentally, by Amelia Christnot, which is a fantastic name, I must say. Clothing brand XXXY Athletics, who made transphobia their brand, literally released a new ad on former Twitter featuring their poster girl, former collegiate swimmer Riley Gaines. In the newest bid for attention for the clothing company, Gaines pulled tape off of her mouth and then claimed she was silenced by trans rights activists. She added that pro-trans university administrators also destroyed her dream of becoming a dentist. Quote, "For daring to say that men and women are different. I've lost friends, of course. The media has been dishonest about me. I've been called every name in the book." And of course, that is itself remarkably dishonest. Like Maya Forstater, saying that men and women are different is not even a misrepresentation of what she actually has said. Quote, "My university told me I'd never get a job. No employer would ever hire me because they would look me up and see that I'm a transphobe." So her friends, her cis friends, told her that she was a bad person and they were no longer friends. Her university told her that she had made herself unemployable by being the voice of hate speech. I don't see any trans people silencing her anywhere in this story so far. But of course, expect honesty from Riley? Come on now. Career or educational counseling that suggests not becoming the poster girl for bigotry might seem like sound advice to most people, but not to Gaines. Quote, "They knew I wanted to go to dental school, and they said that I would never get into dental school. No dental school would ever even look at my application if I spoke up about this." Because I'm sure they just tell just in case you decide you want to be, a hate monger, then you won't be able to go to dental school. It's in, freshman orientation. There's a link to the ad, but no, I'd much rather talk about people's responses. So as you may be aware, the site formerly known as Twitter, a lot of Elon fans over there. Most sane people have left long ago. So it is literally Gaines's home turf, you might say. And still, people over there, where they have the friendliest audience possible, have had just about enough. A user named Midnight Cheese replied, "Ah, yes, the classic, they are canceling me while she has a public platform and is being talked about daily. Playing the victim is a lot easier than doing the work, and it is on brand for her." Midnight Cheese also says, "Who is they? And can you prove that she was trying to be canceled from our government? Because that's the only thing that the First Amendment protects you from. Getting canceled on Twitter isn't the same thing." And also, she hasn't been, but never mind. Gaines has been singing this tune for 4 years now, and even MAGA minions are bored with it. A user named ASMRX, it's unpronounceable. "Your pretty sight is going to hell," it says. "I've never seen anyone be less silenced than her. Seems I can't go anywhere on this site without hearing her whining about getting 5th place." Another user, called Jackslin Lyrical Transsexual Menace. Great name. Points out that the price for Riley Gaines to appear at an event and speak is $20,000 to $30,000 per appearance. But she's poor girl. She's been so silenced, so canceled. Incidentally, if you feel so inclined, you can book me for an appearance for much less, let's just say. My email is also on my website, betterthanumber.com. Hit me up. We'll set something up. Sully Lurks said, forever fascinating to me that the same group of people who rallied against participation trophies has been coddling this woman for years, propagating this idea that her fifth place tie stemmed from an unfair disadvantage, while 4 other cis women beat both of them. Mark Reed is here. Hello, happy Trans Day of Visibility. Yeah, and Mark says, how can she claim anything if she's been silenced? It's very peculiar, isn't it? She's loud enough to ask the question, I guess. There's a bunch more responses, but there's a particular thing I want to try to get to here. There's so many ads. Someone showed a photo of a book called Conservative Voices Are Being Silenced, and it's like the entire front wall of a bookstore. Same vibe. Yeah, absolutely. Another person named Imposter says, I wish someone would actually silence her. She's made a career out of being a 5th place tie victim. Another person pointed out the old Katie Tompkins tweet, which is the woman with short hair with the target painted on her own forehead, saying this is how it feels to be a conservative woman. And the person replied, perfect analogy, because that's not a real target, and you put it there yourself. Another person, Chrono Katie, says she got beat by 4 women and tied with another. It's no one else's fault. She failed in her dreams. Which is, valid. And there it goes on. There's so many ads in between these responses. Okay, it's unclear if Gaines ever tried to get into dental school. The direction of her life changed after learning that altering her initial response to fully supporting trans athletes, but being upset about a trophy, to vehement anti-trans stances was extremely profitable. Now, of course, remember when she was first interviewed by the MAGA folk about tying with Leah Thomas. She was fine with Leah Thomas. In fact, she was roughly, vaguely supportive-ish. It was only after that the story started to change. In the 2022 NCAA Women's Swimming Championships, Gaines tied with transgender woman Leah Thomas. As with most competitions, awards are made in advance for the top positions, but generally only one of each. Since there was only one 5th place trophy, Thomas was handed that one, and Gaines held the 6th place one for the official photos. Gaines later received her 5th place trophy in the mail. Oh no! It was that perceived slight, being the one who got her trophy via mail, that Gaines initially complained about. But conservative media was desperate to find any perceived harm caused by a trans woman being in sports, and they kept coming up empty. Probably because trans women aren't actually dominating in sports, like right-wing pundits continuously claim. And there are very, very few trans women in sports. In December 2024, the NCAA reported that fewer than 10 openly trans student athletes were competing out of over 510,000 total participants, or less than 0.002%. And that, of course, is all trans student athletes, trans women, trans men, and non-binaries. Less than 10. Trans athletic bans are another Republican solution searching for a problem. So conservative media latched onto Gaines. Gaines told the Daily Wire, in the 200-yard NCAA women's final, I tied Thomas. Despite going the same time down to the hundredths of a second, the NCAA gave Thomas the trophy as they explained this was necessary for photo purposes and told me I had to go home empty-handed. Gaines's original tale of woe was about a cisgender woman being mildly inconvenienced by a trans woman who could have been any woman who tied Gaines for the same finishing position in the final race. One person would get the 5th place trophy. One would hold the 6th and get theirs in later in the mail. If Gaines had gotten her trophy at the meet and Thomas was mailed hers, Riley Gaines, the right-wing transphobic activist, wouldn't exist. Maybe she'd even be a dentist. In that first Daily Wire interview in March of 2022, Gaines said, quote, I am in full support of Leah Thomas and full support of her transition and her swimming career and everything like that, because there's no doubt that she works hard too, but she's just abiding by the rules that the NCAA put in place. The whole transphobic thing didn't start until an appearance on the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show, where the host led the witness to the right words. After that point, Gaines began misgendering Thomas and referring to her as a biological man because it led to a much more lucrative payoff. Within months of her race against Thomas, Trump was summoning Gaines on stage at CPAC saying, where's our beautiful, great swimmer? Soon, Gaines would have a 6-figure foundation bearing her name, a brand endorsement with XXXY, a podcast, a byline on several books, deals to sell ivermectin, and a financial service. Speaking engagements, of course, commanding a reported $25,000-ish per appearance as well. All of this thanks to Leah Thomas, I suppose. Although I guess it's not even thanks to Leah Thomas. There's more to be said about Riley, such as the fact that her coach actually was assaulting other girls on her team. All her protect the women thing, she never mentions that. Ever. The fact that she was fine with Thomas in the beginning and then you know what? We've talked about it before. We don't need to talk about it now. Because instead, we're going to talk about something worse. The Riley Gaines Act, currently introduced in the House of Representatives, would encourage cisgender athletes to sue organizations that allow transgender athletes to compete. Period. Allie Gibbs writes, I regret to inform you all that my arch nemesis is now annoying me through other people. On February 4th, House Representative John McGuire from Virginia introduced H.R. 7368, or the Riley Gaines Act. If you aren't overly familiar with Gaines's work, you may be confused about why a legislative act would be named after her. Did she go missing? Was she murdered in church? Why does she get a law named after her? It's hard to say. Well, no, it's not. If you know anything about Gaines, you probably already guessed. No, it isn't a bill about dentistry, the career Gaines once hoped to pursue before she set aside her ambitions to become a full-time professional bigot. It's a punitive bill crafted to maximally harm transgender women for participating in sports, a human right. Shocker. Gaines has appeared in assigned media coverage quite a lot over the years, mostly because of Allie. That said, she can't dig in too deep on Gaines herself, since it's simply legislation inspired by her bigotry, not something she's actively involved in. That said, we can remind you that Gaines is a liar who has made it her life's work to define women by their genitalia and inferiority to men. And she's doing it for a payday. Literally a grift by definition. Anyway, the Riley-Gaines Act was designed, it says, to, quote, authorize civil actions against institutions of higher education and athletic associations that negligently or recklessly permit a biologically male student athlete to compete in an athletic competition intended exclusively for female student athletes, resulting in harm. What is harm? Who knows? What is biologically male? Who knows? The last time I checked, all males were biological. Until we, well, I suppose you might argue that some of the robots that we've been producing recently, those that have certain anatomical characteristics that we associate with maleness, they might be artificial males. But generally speaking, when we refer to males with personhood, they're pretty much all biological. Pretty much. I think it's safe to say. So what do they mean, biological males? It's such a weird phrase. If you need it boiled down to something more digestible, the crux is cis girls would be able to sue schools and organizations that allow trans people to compete in sports for any imagined harm they can drum up. The trans person looked at me funny. It hurt my feelings. $10,000, please. Perhaps this theoretical harm would be physical. As we all know, before trans girls and women began competing in sports against cis girls and women, injuries on the field simply never happened. Or maybe the harm is not measured in damage to the body, but damage to vague future opportunities. If a trans girl received a scholarship that your cis daughter wanted, she would simply be able to sue the scholastic or athletic association that awarded the scholarship for, quote, the value of the loss of a scholarship or professional opportunity. But how about that? Perhaps you believe your cisgender daughter was the next Serena or Venus Williams. Maybe you should be able to sue her college for, say, the entire net worth of the Williams twins because she was forced to compete against a dreaded biological male. A term as dull as it is meaningless. And also worth noting, both Williams sisters have competed against cis men and beat them. But never mind. You might be interested to know that a recent study or systematic review out of the University of Sao Paulo, Brazil, makes it apparent that trans women's athleticism is largely in line with cis women's after 1 to 3 years of hormone replacement therapy. A cool fact that we seem to have rediscovered every year for the past decade or so without meaningful change occurring. Damn, that's heartbreaking. Also, I don't have the Sao Paulo study on my website, but I do have at least 2 others. One from the IOC that does show that result. All that info, all the receipts on the website, betterthanembry.com. Get ye over there. That's also where I keep my links for ways to support, not just the Venmo and the Cash App scrolling across your screen, but also other things like Patreon, for instance. But YouTube works too. Super chats, like we just got from Ninjester. Thank you, Jester, who sends us $2 and says, it used to be legal to just sue anyone for anything. I mean, I think technically you still can for the most part. It turns out that when your employer breaks, human rights laws about you have to wait for the state to give you permission to sue. But for the most part, you can just sue. If you can get a lawyer to take your case, you can just go for it. Laws like the Riley-Gaines Act function as preventative measures to stop people from supporting the trans community. Academic and athletic institutions that have no moral argument against including us will find themselves compelled to exclude us for fear of discriminatory litigation. We are such a small percentage of the overall population that it will be significantly easier to simply remove us from day-to-day life than to risk losing capital to protect us. That is the cold, hard math these people will do as it becomes more broadly accepted to discriminate against us. We've seen bounty laws like these before in Texas and Arkansas, and at the federal level from the child sex abuser's greatest ally, Pam Bondi. The bill still has to go before a committee and be voted on, and potentially altered in both congressional chambers. We can't tell whether or not it will pass, though. It seems likely that the congressional Democrats won't have to fight very hard to kill this one. It is, however, another shameless assault on the rights of trans women and girls and cis women and girls who don't look a certain way. In an era where our civil rights and personhood are under attack every hour of every day. And that should disgust all of us. Miranda says, and yet the IOC is apparently now going to ban trans women from competing with cis women. Rebecca Watson did a video on it today. Cool. Skepchick does some good work. I haven't had a chance to check it out. I've been very busy, but I'm glad to hear it, and I will definitely go look later. And everybody else should too, because again, Skepchick does good work usually. So hooray. She recently, somewhat recently, did a pretty thorough takedown of Dawkins and the other Epstein friends of his, shall we say. I think it was actually about Lawrence Krauss. It's not important. It's not important. The point is, she does good work. And yes, and that is a big, big deal that I don't think I even have on the schedule. We don't have time for all of it today. It's okay. One thing, politically speaking, though, quick note from the beginning of March, anti-trans Democrats blown out in North Carolina's primary election. There's a lot to this story. There's a lot to all the stories. But to summarize, a bunch of Democrats were either completely neutral on trans people, like Harris was in this past election, never even said the word trans the entire time. Or we're saying, because Harris lost the election, we need to distance ourselves even more from trans people. We, the middle right-wing party, have to move further to the right. Because why would we want to represent the majority of the population who now have no one to vote for? I mean, so yeah, they lost in primaries a lot. They got primaried from the left and they lost very big, specifically on the issue of trans rights in North Carolina. Remember, North Carolina is where the very first bathroom bill passed. Remember, that was only 10 years ago. And what happened to that state? They immediately got boycotted by millions of people and giant corporations. Businesses started shutting down factories to move out of the state over a relatively mundane bathroom bill. Compared to what's going on now? Madness. But at least somebody's primarying the fucking Democrats. Stand up for something, you spineless assholes. Additional good news. Tolarian Academy. Magic the Gathering themed channel here on the YouTubes. Magic, of course, a very trans-friendly, shall we call it a sport. It's more of a collector hobby kind of thing, but it's also a playable game. TLDR. They raised a fuck ton of money for Trans Lifeline. They do this every year. It's a wonderful thing. They do a very good job. It's probably considerably more than that. I was following this in the recent days. They always go over 500,000. I believe last year they topped 700,000 or so, but this was within the window of their goal. Before Aaron in the Morning wrote about it on February 6th. So it's definitely right. That's just the first 2 days. That's just the first 2 days. Let me see if I can see what their GoFundMe is at right now, if I can find it. And of course, this goes to support Trans Lifeline. which is a nonprofit organization that isn't funded by anything. Like it's just people. There's no government funding. It's just people. So when the economy gets bad, it gets worse. But people are still stepping up in a big way through Tolarian Academy, trying to help keep this organization running. And they do need help. They're getting more calls than ever. As hate increases, as legislative attacks on trans people increase, more and more people are pushed right to the edge. Trans Lifeline makes a big difference. I wish they had, better hiring practices, but that's a whole other topic unto itself. So yeah, here I found the fundraiser, and they surpassed $600,000 out of a $600,000 goal, which is really fucking cool. That's excellent to hear. Another thing that's excellent to hear is Miranda sent us a super chat for $20. Thank you, Miranda, and says, Ember, you are amazing. Thank you for all the work you do. Thank you. I very, very, very much appreciate it. It's hard making YouTube a job, especially when, you're an intersex transgender atheist who doesn't believe in conspiracy theories and like, oh my goodness. Like nobody wants to hear from me. I am a very controversial figure. So we do our best. That said, there are a few people, all of you fine folks here tonight. Skeptic Haven has had me on a few times. I've been guests on a few of our community members' shows, like Maya from Bad Science Sunday, good Maya from Bad Science Sunday. I do a show with Mark Reed. We're over on his channel every other weekend. And in a couple of months, I'm going to be at Truth Wanted, possibly with Kelly Laughlin. I don't know for sure at this point, but I'll be over there eventually. Kelly invited me, whom I met at the Ark Encounter this past year. They're doing the Ark Encounter protest again this year, one of the early weekends in July. And you can catch me in person at NanoCon. I'm running a workshop with Godless Engineer. So I have been invited to a few places. Mark's like, then call me nobody. Yes. So there's a lot. There's a lot of cool things going on. But still, we do our best. All right. Let's see. There's one other thing I wanted to get to, and we are very quickly running out of time to do it. United Nations, about a week ago, they held a thing. The United States introduced an effort to basically attempt to criminalize being a trans woman, because it's always trans women specifically they have a problem with, but they tried to do a thing about it in the United Nations. They were like, all United Nations must adopt our policy of burning trans women at the stake, or whatever the fuck their deal is. And the UN wasn't having it at all. So delegates at the United Nations 70th Annual Commission on the Status of Women overwhelmingly voted against considering a proposal by the United States to adopt an anti-trans definition of gender. On March 19th, the final day of the 9-day conference, the U.S. introduced a resolution calling on UN member states to officially define gender as referring only to men and women. The resolution claimed that the landmark Beijing Declaration on Women's Rights, adopted at the Fourth World Conference on Women in 1995, already defined gender as referring to men and women. But the letter from the Progressive Women's Rights Caucus, circulated among delegates last week, noted that the commission did not adopt a specific definition of gender in 1995. Crystal Downing of the International Crisis Group said that at the time, member states agreed to disagree on interpretations of the word. So they left it up to the individual countries to define what the fuck man and woman meant, which may be a problem, but it was a way to resolve things in 95. Quote, they were more comfortable with leaving the term open to interpretation than they were with any attempt to create a mandatory definition, Downing said, according to Pass Blue. Jennifer Rauch, a global advocacy officer at FOS Feminista, accused the US of being willing to lie to push forward their own gender ideology onto people in the UN system. And I fucking love that, because that's exactly what's happening. Trans people are not an ideology, but the political bullshit coming out of Washington and the Heritage Foundation absolutely is. They're the ones trying to push a gender ideology onto everyone else. During this last Thursday's final CSW session at UN headquarters in New York City, the representative from Belgium said that the US resolution was factually incorrect, as it misquotes and contradicts Annex 4 of the Fourth World Conference on Women and attempts to rewrite what was carefully agreed and reflected in Beijing over 30 years ago. On behalf of 25 other member states, Belgium called for a no-action motion to block the proposal. Pakistan and Chile were the only two member states to vote with the US against that motion, with 23 countries voting to block the anti-trans proposal and 17 abstaining. Quote, "It was a huge moment of the world telling the US that their transphobia stops here," Maria Paula Perdimo of the LGBTQ advocacy organization Outright International said. "We follow the rules, and if you want to bring this, do it appropriately, do it with due process, and do it with truth." None of which the United States is currently capable of doing, apparently. So that's neat. That's special. That's wonderful. All right, we're going to take a quick break to show you some of the assholes behind all this madness, including the aforementioned Helen Joyce, who are pushing all of this hate for the same reason. And when we get back, I've got a short video for us to play with, which we probably won't actually finish, but we'll give it an old college try.
I have a problem with this stuff being normalized across the spectrum, and specifically, like, why push this on kids? Why introduce this to kids?
It's better because it's better.
How though?
Yeah, because it's better.
Can you make an argument for
Sure,
it?
because it's better.
In what ways?
The ways in which it's better.
I am a depraved wretch. I am a great sinner. I'm a worm, completely undeserving of any love or any grace. I'm nothing. I'm nothing.
You're incapable of being a good person. You're an evil person. You're a terrible person. At the core fabric of who you are. That's why we need laws. We need laws because we're bad people. All of us are bad people.
You can't spell Pride Month without demon. PRIDEMONTH.
If we don't know who the women are, because they are just people, then we won't be able to pull the women up to equality with men.
We have to try to limit the harm. And that means reducing or keeping down the number of people who transition. And that's for two reasons. One of them is that every one of those people is a person who's been damaged. But the second one is every one of those people is basically, you know, a huge problem to a sane world.
Transgenderism must be eradicated.
Carl, that kills people.
The LGBT, transgender, grooming our children's minds is a national security threat. We need to hold people for treason, start having some public hearings, and start executing people.
I will use whatever gives me victory. I don't care about the truth, and I don't care about the law. I care about one thing, the control.
But then they rigged the election, and now we won, so I'm going to be your president.
And what happened is they rigged the election, and I became president, so that was a good thing.
I agreed with many, many things you said during, in fact, probably more than most other candidates when you were running for president, but I still would not have voted for you because you're an Indian.
I just want to say I feel good about the Republican Party. I feel good about where we're going as a nation. We're killing all the right people and we're cutting your taxes.
It was actually a tremendous blessing to these children for them to be killed and go to heaven and be with God.
If they die, they die.
How about we all come together and say, let's stop attacking pedophiles.
Stop letting people pressure you into thinking.
I want to be ignorant, honestly.
Being a Christian doesn't exclude us from experiencing spiritual dryness.
We're bad people. All of us are bad people.
All right, I have for us a video called The Enemies Project, because it really addresses a lot of very important things pertaining to all of this. We don't have a whole lot of time left, so let's get right to it.
I don't believe in people who look and dress up like voodoo dolls, lots of makeup, who have an evil agenda of corrupting these children.
These people that are coming after.
Who is she talking about? Voodoo dolls, an evil agenda. She's wearing a Trump hat and she's talking about an evil agenda of corrupting children. The Vice Admiral of Epstein Island, and she's worried about other people who have an agenda of corrupting children. Not to quote it, but also, no, that's not how, that's so fucking backwards. But of course, that was the point, isn't it? She's got that mark of the beast on her head. And that's exactly what it's supposed to do. It's supposed to suck your brain out. And it did. Good job.
Us truly lack empathy and sometimes even humanity.
My worst scenario will be my kids being converted to changing their bodies.
The trans, non-binary, queer kids today need to have a role model that isn't a drag queen or a pop star, just a normal person that is living their life out and proud and being who they are.
They're not fit.
And that's why we need visibility. Like, it's fantastic that drag queens are rocking and doing things. Drag queens are not trans people, though. There are a few trans people who are also drag artists. But generally, drag and trans, separate things. Even a trans person who is a drag artist, not the same thing, right? It's baffling. It just speaks to the right-wing tendency to not understand things aggressively and loudly, that they keep mixing these two groups up. But never mind that. Pop stars, people like Kim Petras, fantastic, love to see it. But not everyone can be a super famous singer who has the resources to do all the things while they're still very young. Fantastic for them. But, like, that's not everybody. You need regular, everyday people to be visible. We need as many visible people as possible so that when the conservatives try to hyper-focus on the one person that, you know, maybe there's something they don't like about, like, you know, tying for 5th place in a race with, that's not the only trans person anybody knows the name of. We are everywhere. We're in hospitals, as nurses, as doctors, as candy stripers. We drive school buses. We drive tractor trailers, or at least we used to. We're in every job, in every position, all across this country. And if I understand people are very, very afraid. I really get it. I've been driven out of my job. I've been physically attacked. I really get it. But the more of us there are, the more we're just regular people to everyone else.
To be in the community. They should be in mental institutions until they get better, to live with other humans.
It's a very fascinating for a mega apologist to say something like that. But never mind.
This new old thing has taken over our society. Mockery, the relentless teardown of the other side. They're all hypocrites. They're all cowards. They're the enemy. To hell with them. The result? Relationships shattered, society split in half, with each of us taking sides. How many wonder, is there even another way? I've been a peacemaker for
Well, of course, there's another way. What he's talking about is internet rage culture. And it does poison people's minds. I mean, one of the big issues we're having with the billionaires right now is they've all fucking brain rotted on Twitter. But never mind.
20 years. There's another way.
We can go a little faster.
What do you think of trans people?
It's insulting to God, who is it?
What a start. I realize a lot of people feel that way, but where they get that idea, who the fuck knows? Because I've been through the holy books, right? I'm also an ordained minister. I have religious education degrees. There's not a damn thing in the Bible specifically about trans people unless you take a certain interpretation of something Paul said, which is actually that the priesthood, the apostles, the disciples, the followers of Jesus should strive to be more like trans people. But that's only one very specific interpretation of one passage. For the most part, we're not even mentioned. So where you get that idea, it sounds to me like people are trying to speak on behalf of their mythical being of choice, which, if their mythical being of choice actually existed, might actually be an affront to that being. I mean, if I were a god and people made up shit I'd said when I definitely did not, I might be a little smitey with them. Just saying.
Creator of heaven and earth, he's our creator, and it's also mocking other people's culture. I think trans people...
Being yourself is mocking other people's culture. Interesting take.
Have the motivation to change the world the way it is and take it to a delusional world and not all of us.
Why would they want to do that?
I think they go through a lot of rejection in life.
And they change their gender in order to be accepted in the community?
Yes, maybe because the opposite sex rejected them.
What do you think of people who have...
Maybe because oh my goodness, she just hasn't even thought about this at all, but never mind that. There's a lot of projection. I mean, the MAGA hat is itself kind of a lighthouse thing, right? Like a lot of what most MAGA people say is just regurgitating stuff they've been indoctrinated with. This isn't necessarily their fault, except in failing to use critical thinking skills and question the bullshit they're being told. But it's still true that a lot of what comes out of a MAGA person's mouth is what the MAGA movement itself does. It's projection. It's putting blame onto a scapegoat so they don't have to answer for what they have done and continue to do in some cases. Miranda says, yes, become trans to gain greater social acceptance. Totally. That's a whole subject for another time.
These judgments of you.
I don't think you have empathy for other people that are different than you. I think the motivation comes from a place of fear that there are people that don't fit into this clear-cut man and woman.
And why would they fear that?
Because it calls into question your femininity and your view of masculinity. And if a man is not a man and a woman is not a woman, and you can be on the spectrum and it's not just one or the other, then you have to question where you fit.
So to be clear, one of the reasons, and I get this very much, one of the reasons that some people find trans people threatening is because we make it plain that you're allowed to be yourself. And when you're a person who's been forced into a certain role, a certain expression of gender your entire life, and then someone comes along and is just being themselves authentically, it can make a person a little resentful, more than a little resentful. And we'll find out more about that in moments to come.
You have theories about each other's motivation.
Yeah.
And we're not testing them yet.
Okay, the text on screen says, people who believe they are under threat almost always have a mistaken view of each other's motivations. with the almost always in there, I'll just let it pass for right now. It is worth noting,
Would your world
there is that element of false centrism where people walk into a room and assume that a person being attacked and their attacker are on opposite sides of a middle ground, and not that the person being attacked is on the middle ground. Of course, there's ground between the it's like that old parable. It's been updated a few times. The most recent version that's popping to mind is conservatives say, we want to do a genocide, and Democrats say, no. And so the centrists come along and say, folks, let's compromise. What about a little genocide? And the conservatives go, oh, I'm good with a little genocide. And the Democrats go, no. And then the centrists turn to them and go, why won't you compromise? You're being unreasonable. Fake centrists. Son of a bitch.
world be better off without these people?
I think that my day-to-day life would be easier. I don't think the world would be better. I don't think the world would be better without my parents. I don't think the world would be better without differing views. But it's hard not to feel that my world would be safer and trans kids' worlds would be safer if they weren't being demonized from a young age.
Yes, it's the demonization. It's not that the world would be better without religious fundamentalists, MAGA people, cultists, conspiracy theorists, pseudoscientists of all kinds. It's that the world would be better if they were better people, if they had compassion for others, if they had empathy for others, if they approached unknowns and questions with curiosity and an intent to learn rather than an intent to judge. The world would definitely be a better place. Not with or without more people, but with people being better at being humans. That would definitely make things better.
And harassed and forced into suicide.
Tell me about your nightmare scenario, your nightmare political scenario.
I've been seeing it coming, living in San Francisco, where they're trying to gayify our children. They're even calling them
San Francisco, where they're trying to gayify the children.
their children. Right now, I have what my kids are learning in school. That learning how to hate your body is going to get you into an Ivy League school. We've seen people getting jobs just because they identify as trans or LGBT.
Oh, yes. Those job offers are just rolling in because I'm trans. I absolutely was not driven out of my job because I'm trans, nor every other fucking trans person I know personally. We've all been driven out of our jobs specifically because we are trans. All of us. But tell me more about how we're just handing out jobs to people because they're trans.
But the same community does not want to add the D for detransitioners. They don't want the D. So that's a fake life.
The community doesn't want the D. I broke my camera. Oh my goodness. Okay. I've said before, and while opinions differ, because there are some very high profile, very bad detransitioners, like Chloe Cole, who, like Riley Gaines, is a professional grifter. Like, she makes a lot of money trying to hurt trans people. But I digress. There is a visibility issue. There's like 7 detransitioners that people know of. At least one of them isn't even a detransitioner, and at least 2 of them are still trans. But never mind that. They're getting paid by the right wing to pretend to be detransitioners, and that's all that matters. It's a visibility thing. We do need detrans visibility so that everyone can see detransitioners are not Chloe Cole and Abel Garcia and Daisy, whatever the fuck her last name is at the moment. There's a lot of detrans people. Granted, trans people are somewhere between 1% and 2% of the population, and detrans people are around 1% of that population. So there are not many, but there are more detrans people than that. From certain points of view, I might be considered detrans because, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, my birth documents had an F on them. Fuck ever. From my point of view and other people's point of view, detrans people are trans people. They just transitioned twice. It's unfortunate that you have to do it twice, much like people who transition when they're adults have to go through puberty twice. It's unfortunate. It shouldn't be necessary. But because our society kind of sucks, sometimes it is. C'est la vie. It is what it is. But we want the best for people. We want people to not suffer, to live comfortably in their bodies. We don't have any ill will towards detransitioners. They're part of the trans community. They go through the same struggles and need the same health care as the rest of us for the same reason. And it's the same people trying to stop them as they're trying to stop us. We're one community. We don't need to add a D to the acronym because it's part of the T already.
It's crazy to hear this in person. I know people feel this way, but it's crazy to hear it.
What would your nightmare political scenario look like?
Trans people being even forced even further into self-hatred and a closet.
I know it's hard to actually sit in this uncomfortable situation, but if you're willing, convince the other person that you're right.
We are rolling back all of these protections for kids in schools to actually have anybody to talk to about this, where their parents think they're evil or these thoughts are wrong. We're seeing the numbers already of trans youth killing themselves.
You will never fully be a woman. The breast.
I don't know if that's an edit, but to go from like maybe have some compassion for children who are suffering, and you will never be a woman. What the fuck?
It's a fake. You will eventually get breast cancer. You will eventually, I don't know if you had your penis removed. This is all delusional. These kids, their long life has...
She's looking directly at a woman and saying, you are fake. This is delusion. Ma'am, this is a physical, observable, measurable reality right in front of you. Other people can see her. If you look at this woman and say, no, that's something else, it's you struggling with a delusion. And maybe it comes from that baseball cap you've got on your head there. I'm not saying it's a cause, but there seems to be an association with people who wear that particular cap and that specific kind of delusion.
It's going to be cut short because of the big pharmaceutical companies who are benefiting from mental illness. I'm sure you started taking your depression medicine, anxiety, and all this stuff. I need my kids to learn about technology, AI, medical stuff, not this garbage that is being taught in school. It's never going to help them be a human being, a smart person.
Really? You think your children understanding other people, other cultures won't help them be a better human being? Considering how you turned out, you really think that?
Going to grow up being dumb.
Are you convinced in any way by each other?
No.
Yeah, never.
How do you feel about this person right now?
I live in the city.
But here's a real person. Here's a person.
Yes,
How do you feel?
beautiful, but living a fake life. And eventually they do end up committing suicide because they don't get the happiness they're looking for.
Trans people have existed.
She's just pre-concluding. Eventually you're going to off yourself. And I'll just hate you a little harder and help you along that way. No. It's true that our incidence rate of self-harm is very high. Understandably so when dealing with bullshit like this all the time, every day. And I cannot stress this enough. Every day I wake up to notifications from every social media, my email, whatever. Half of it is unsolicited dick pics, and the other half is you're a demon and you're bound for hell for what you're doing to children and whatever. Like, half of the people give me the same bullshit that every woman has to deal with, and the other half of the people are threatening and abusive every single day. I very much get it why people don't want to be visible, or why the people who are visible have a higher incidence rate of self-harm. But there's also this: despite that nonsense, the static, the pain I've been through, and the shit I've had to endure, I am still far happier with my life than I was ever before. Because at least now, despite what else is happening in the world, I get to be me. I've been open about this for a little over 2 years. That's not long, but it's long enough that it still tickles me every single day when I see a dick pic in my notifications, and I chuckle a little bit. Because to all the strangers of the world, I'm just another woman. It's horrible that women have to put up with that. It's what we call euphoria. It's gross and horrible and misogynistic and just fucked up. But also, to most of the world, I'm just a woman. And that's kind of great.
Forever. You can look back in any culture and see that we have existed. People in your past, your ancestors, have been in between genders. We are always here. We're going to continue to be here. And
that is a valid point, because once again, this concept of male, female, that's it, nothing else, is new. It's really new. It first started to show up with European colonialization in the last half of the previous millennium, but it really only set into its current form around the 1950s.
I don't want to pretend I'm anything but a trans person.
That never existed in my culture, nor in my world growing up. I actually used to get punished for being, playing with boys rough games. Boys were boys.
Because they were punished for doing anything else. Do you see how we're
putting lipsticks and all that? You will get punished because that's girl stuff.
But you were playing rough.
Case in point. This is why this fucking culture is a problem. Like, we're not even talking about trans people. We're talking about boys doing things that are judged too girly and girls doing things that are too boyish. You would punish them. Like kids be kids. Fucking hell. Yeah. No wonder nothing else happens, because nothing else is allowed. It's punished. And you wonder why people self-harm. My goodness.
House with boys, and you weren't allowed to do that. Was that fair?
It was, because it shaped me. They were showing me about femininity. I was being...
The look on their two faces, Eve is like, are you fucking kidding me? Like, this is Stockholm Syndrome. This is the victim of abuse saying the abuse was good, actually, because it made me into the ditto-headed clone of a person I am today, indoctrinated and programmed. It's the best thing ever, I guess. And Eve is like horrified.
Groomed to be a wife, a woman, and not a tomboy, just a man. I was not being groomed to be a man. You're literally a genetically modified man. You're fake.
Every single...
If you think Eve looks like a man, you should get your eyes checked or see a psychiatrist. Because I don't care what your subjective understanding of gender is, there is absolutely nothing going on there that triggers any category marker for manliness. What are you seeing? Do you think you can see her genetics? Are you looking at her chromosomes? What, if you weren't introduced to her as a trans woman, I guarantee you would never fucking know.
Person is shaped by hormones.
Yes.
You are shaped by hormones as a child. How do you know what my brain was like? There's been studies on trans people's
Fake
brains.
studies because they get funded by big pharmaceutical companies.
Oh, the conspiracy thinking right out of the... All right, how do you know they're fake? Where are the other studies that show these are wrong? There aren't any. Now, this actually came up earlier today. I popped in at a Jovan Bradley stream. He was having a fun Trans Day of Visibility stream with another creator, and somebody brought up the brain studies. Jovan couldn't think of them off the top of his head. I've got 5 or 6 or 7 of them linked on betterthanever.com under the gender sci tab, because that's what that's for. There's 30 or 40 different studies all checking different areas of the brain, but I've got a few of them linked. That seems like it should be enough. But to say they're fake studies when she doesn't even know what they say, oh, it's big pharma. It's literally a conspiracy theory. It's saying the science is fake because big pharma? Are you fucking kidding me? I understand they need to have a scapegoat to point at if they're going to say it's a conspiracy. And this is exactly like flat earth thinking, right? It's saying NASA is lying to you about the shape of the earth, lying to everyone about the shape of the earth for some nefarious to get tax money, I guess. To get like 0.1% of the federal operating budget so they can continue to pretend to do science. It doesn't make a lot of sense, but that's what they have to do. Same thing here. Every physician, endocrinologist, medical association, surgeon, major medical group on the planet is lying to everyone about everything. For big pharma, you have to have something to put at the end of that, even though it doesn't make any sense. And when you look into the information, the amount of money that the entire medical industry makes off of people, the amount they make off of cis people, trans people doesn't even show up on the graph. So why would they be funding something that doesn't even make enough money to show up as a drop in the bucket?
So do you think trans and gay people should be killed?
They should not, but they should have the right information of being who.
How do you determine what the right information is if every study that exists is contaminated by this conspiracy? Where do you get the correct information from? Your ass? How do you know what the truth is? Even if this is the same, it's also conspiracy thinking. It's the same thing we run into with the young earthers. They say, oh, evolution is false, evolution is false, evolution is false. If you for a moment say, okay, for the sake of argument, let's say evolution is false. Now what? Well, that's it. That's all they've got. They can't prove the earth is only 6,000 years old and the Bible is literally correct because all they've got is picking holes in the existing model. Same thing here. If you say, suppose everything all of science says about trans people being legitimate were true, all of it's a conspiracy. How do we find the truth? How do you know the truth? There's nothing there. Because it's a fucking conspiracy. It's just pseudoscience. It's just asserting vibes as if they were facts.
They are,
Not being who they are.
No, of who they should be, who they are. I mean,
You should tell them who they should be.
Not the real
Who makes the
story.
rules on who is who?
When you talk to the Americans,
That's a fantastic question. Who decides? Who gets to decide gender? It's a fun question. We have yet to have a really good conversation about. I keep inviting people and people keep not showing up to talk about it.
love and patriotic, MAGA. They just want to make America great. They never used to have this nonsense.
This is a really good place.
we again with the we never used to have this. You didn't know about it, so it didn't exist. But also that's not actually what MAGA does. It's a side topic. It's politics. It's a different issue, and we don't have time to go into it. But suffice it to say, giving the Epstein class control over everything, not actually making America very great, I must say. Are we winning yet, son?
It's the transition, okay? I give you guys a lot of credit for going through this conversation because it ain't easy to be in either seat. And I want to point out this kind of conversation is not convincing probably anybody who's not already on your side. So I want to have a different conversation and we'll see where it goes.
He is right about that. People who are indoctrinated and brainwashed into MAGA are never going to listen to anything that is, because everything that isn't what they already think must be part of the conspiracy. Likewise, people who know that MAGA is a conspiracy theory, that the whole transphobic thing is a pseudoscientific conspiracy theory, they're not going to believe the conspiracy theory. They already know it's pseudoscience. So yeah, he is correct on that one.
So I'm going to press emotional reset, and let's try to meet this person differently. Tell the other person about what's beautiful in your world.
That, I must say, is a pretty good question. Don't tell me about the issues. Tell me what makes your way of living beautiful to you. What do you get out of being this way that makes it so persuasive? Because after all, that is what people cling to when you confront them with real information and you say, I want you to change your worldview. I want you to believe what is true and to stop hurting people. Well, change is scary. And change is scary because there's certain things they value that they're afraid of losing. What are those things? What makes it worth fighting to stay in the cult?
That's going to convey something about you. What is really moving, important, beautiful in your world?
What I feel that is more beautiful in my life is my children. Just the gift of being pregnant, feeling this, the baby kicks, and just looking at the whole world, how God created us with, the ability of having a body that can, like a kangaroo pouch, hide your baby there, just give birth, the pain, and giving my children who are born here the opportunity to thrive and just experience the American dream.
What outside of your...
So wanting good things for your children, I very much get that. There is a certain magic to it. I do have to concede. There's this, for all the pain, for all the really bad things that can happen, there is a certain something about creating a life that is separate from yourself and causing that life to come into the world. It's almost godlike power, but from an abstract position, because there's a lot of pain and suffering that goes into it. But that's a talk for another time.
Outside of your immediate family, what else is beautiful to you?
I have amazing friends. A lot of them are moms. I am with Moms for America.
Mega moms. Amazing. All right, I'll look. We're going to run over. It's fine. I'll look real quick. Moms for America. Well, first of all, immediately flagged as a transphobic group. So I have a browser extension that trans people and allies can flag organizations, people, etc., as pro-trans or anti-trans, depending on their actions and what they do and how they do and so forth. So that, say, for example, we can flag the Daily Wire, Ben Shapiro's thing, as transphobic. So that other trans people who come across it for the first time, who aren't familiar with it, don't have to be exposed to Ben's bullshit before being aware this is transphobic. We just know it's transphobic going in. Very fucking useful tool. Like right now, I'm not familiar with Moms for America. It is flagged as transphobic. I suppose that shouldn't be a shock, but here we are. It looks like it is a nonprofit organization based in Branson, Missouri. Let's see. About. Empower moms, promote liberty, raise patriots. Uh-huh. You know, whenever you see that word liberty, you're dealing with right-wing fundamentalists. Just throwing that out there. It seems to be a thing, you know? But whatever. Mothers who love God, respect life, so they're anti-abortion. That's what that code means. Revere family, which means if you are any kind of LGBT, they will kick you out if they find out. They revere family so much, they will throw you out. And cherish freedom, which is why they want to tell everyone else how to live. Freedom, baby. Oh, yes. The ultimate mom support group. Yeah. Now, in fairness, I am putting a lot of assumptions on the group, but that comes from a lot of experience dealing with this sort of group making these sorts of claims. If I am mistaken, I will absolutely recant my positions about this group, but I would challenge anyone to show me that I am in error about them. Just saying.
I am surrounded by a lot of serial Trumpers who have opened my eyes to a lot of.
She got caught in the girl boss thing, but instead of selling crystals and activated vitamins or whatever, they opened her eyes about Trump things. That explains she's in a cult. She was indoctrinated into a cult. Conspiracy theories all the way down.
Things I never knew about America.
So what's beautiful in your world, and maybe it is Trump and Moms for America moves you, but where you'd wake up and if it was your last day, you'd say, God, thank goodness for this in my world. And my guess is political connections are not what you'd say on your last.
I really like how he's trying to delve deeper. He's like, you've got this confrontational identity that you wear on your sleeve. Your politics is your armor. And this is a thing flat earthers do too. Every conspiracy theory, they will thrust their conspiracy in your face and make you deal with it. Because as long as you're talking about their conspiracy theory, you're not talking about what they actually believe. In flat earthers' case, it's so they don't have to talk about the Bible. If you're talking about the shape of the earth, you're not talking about whether or not the Bible is true. Similar thing in this case. If she's talking about how hatefulness, bigotry, and controlling everyone's life is somehow good for America, what's underneath that she doesn't want to talk about?
Last day.
I lost my mom to breast cancer. And I started making knitted prosthetics and donating to women in the villages. The name of the organization is Limau Cancer Connection, you know.
That's really cool. Breast cancer sucks. A lot of people do need prosthetic boobies. Everyone should have boobies. Boobies are beautiful. Just saying.
You don't have a boob. I used to give you a boob. You don't have a friend when you're going through chemo. We'll connect you with friends.
Why do you do that?
I come from a very philanthropic family where my mom used to come with produce from the village, rent a car, and carry food for the homeless and people who didn't have food. So we are always very giving. People who don't have anything. So
it's really sweet. You know, bring food to people who don't have it. Help people who are going through chemo or who need boobies or whatever the case may be. Right. We love to see it. What changed? Why are we not like that anymore?
Why is that bringing emotion to you?
Because by the time she was dying, nobody was there for her. The community judged her with losing her breasts. So they.
Well, I mean, it's absolutely horrible, but it's a thing that does happen. In fact, it's a thing that still happens in the United States today. A woman has breast cancer, has to have her breasts removed. People are a lot more accepting. Most people are very understanding. In fact, there's a whole thing of people taking ownership of their femininity in spite of mastectomies by having like tattoos to cover the areas. For one example. But there are still people who are like, oh, you lost your breast, you're not a woman anymore. The fuck? If I lost my arm in a farming accident, would I no longer be, what, a person? It doesn't make any damn sense, but people will be hateful over the stupidest shit. To see that she went through this because of something relating to a gendered characteristic, it raises a lot of questions.
Stigmatized her, and because they felt like, they'll catch breast cancer every time they'll be with her. And they showed up at her funeral, but they were not there for her when she was suffering for this whole year.
So I'm imagining that as you hear this and like this deep care for other people, you're thinking something like, wow, not for my people.
Yeah, I would ask why that's not extended. Why is a cis woman losing her breast different than a trans woman not having them?
Cancer is a disease.
There is a certain relationship there.
Transgender is cosmetic.
And I imagine that's something.
It's every trans procedure was developed for reconstructive reasons for cis people. Every single one, except possibly phalloplasty, because the first known phalloplasty was done on a trans man. But that's neither here nor there. They're not cosmetic. They're reconstructive. They're reparatory, even though they may use cosmetic techniques, especially in the case of removing scars and things. You can have cosmetic surgeries, like facial feminization, where you can have bones shaved down or something. Sometimes it's not necessary because sometimes your face reshapes itself as you go through your second puberty. Ask me how I know. Sometimes people have other parts of their body reshaped. Sometimes it bears some resemblance to cosmetic procedures. Sometimes it's medically necessary and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it depends on how many financial resources you have available. But it's not always cosmetic. For instance, I grew these myself. They are quite real. It's not plastic. It's not fake. Any more than Nancy's are.
Not painful.
Yeah, I'm used to feeling excluded.
Do you have any questions about what she finds beautiful in the world?
I mean, personal questions?
Yeah, about what she finds beautiful, and not to prove a point of yours, but curiosity about her life.
Who are the majority?
That's a really good thing too. I'm going to assume it's edited and they didn't just like skip her part entirely, but like to say, ask her questions out of curiosity, not to try to score points. This is what a moderator is supposed to do in these kinds of conversations, to facilitate true communication beneath the political bullshit. Very nicely done.
Of your family, friends? Are they people in the LGBT community?
A large part of my friends are straight and cis, and I find that as I continue to live my life as a woman, I have more in common with women who date men than with the gay community. Most of the time, I actually just don't feel gay. I'm a woman who...
Right. Like if you were a woman who dated women, then you would be a gay woman. You'd be a lesbian, which is a whole different culture than gay men. Gay men, notoriously attracted to men, not to people who are women or who look like women or what, like, duh. A lot of people say, why would you be trans? It's just like gay with extra steps. No. Because you're not a man who's attracted to men who are attracted to other men. None of these things match up. And in many of our cases, we're not even attracted to men. I'm ace myself. I'm not attracted to anybody's genitals. Not that that's anyone else's business, but we will be talking about that next week because Ace Day is April 6th. But we'll save that for another time. there are a lot of trans lesbians, And here's a fun thing. When you transition, when you go through hormone replacement, assuming you do, because not everyone does, an interesting thing happens. About a third of people keep the same orientation they had beforehand. About a third of people reverse polarity. If you were same-sex attracted before, you're now same-sex attracted the other way because you're on the other side now. But about a third of people discover they're bisexual. They're interested in everybody. It's a weird phenomenon when you suddenly don't hate your body, that you want to, have fun with more people, regardless of what plumbing those people happen to have.
Loves a man and wants a family.
So your boyfriend is a straight man?
Yes. He's never dated anybody outside of cis women before.
Cis means, you know what cis means?
It means that your birth sex matches your gender identity, how you feel inside.
All right.
So basically,
right, cis is on the same side of. You're on the same side as you started on. You didn't have to move, whereas trans is the other side. Now, for an intersex person, it's really hard to be cis because, what does that mean in terms of gender expression? And also, we're talking about what you're assigned, not what you actually are. There are a number of cases where people have intersex conditions where anatomically they appear to be one sex, and then puberty hits and it turns out they're the other. So what does this even mean in those cases? It's hard to say. It gets complicated, but we're only dealing with the rough shape of models, a lot of intersecting topics, some of which are more well understood and described than others. It gets messy, which is one of the reasons you can't run around being well, the dictionary says. It doesn't really work. I mean, ever, but especially not in this case.
Anybody that's not trans.
Okay. So why do we need to learn all this?
Well, it's easier than saying somebody born a certain way that feels a certain way.
I feel like it's unfair because why do they have to transition using my taxpayers' dollars?
What I'd like is for each of you to...
Whoa, that's a whole other thing. They just cut right off. So why do people get chemotherapy using taxpayer dollars? It's oh my goodness. I heard a thing earlier today. If your house catches fire, how dare you use my taxpayer dollars for the fire department I pay for to put out your house? It's the same thing. If you have a medical need, that's what that is for. It's the same sort of bullshit of oh, well, poor people shouldn't get food stamps because I'm paying taxes. Or schools shouldn't get my tax money because I don't have a kid in schools right now. It's the dumbest fucking argument, which is why it always comes from the right. But never mind that. Different topic. We don't have time.
Have an opportunity to be known. Okay. And part of you being known is that you have concerns about your kids. That's where these questions are coming from. But right now, if you're asking questions, what I'd love for it to be is because you're interested in Eve as the person, and vice versa. Share with the other person what has been the hardest experience.
I'm struggling to make ends meet, but the government is using money, taxpayers' money, to transition people.
Why is this particular experience the hardest in your life?
That's such a weird thing. Her own hardest experience is struggling to make ends meet. I can fucking relate. Once again, haven't had a job in 10 months at this point because of transphobia and the injuries I suffered at that job because of transphobia. I am really, really good at pushing off the day when I run out of time. When either I run out of food or run out of medicine or just can't pay my rent anymore, whatever the case may be. For a long time, I was under this idea that most people can only last 2 or 3 weeks without a paycheck. I've managed to put it off a lot longer than anybody has any right to. but I can't put it off indefinitely. At some point, I'm going to run out of food or medicine or not be able to pay the rent, or something will break I can't replace. Like, late last year, I lost my monitor. It just broke. It died. It happens. I can't afford to replace it. So I'm currently using a photography wedding display as a makeshift monitor. But if something breaks, I can't come up with a workaround. That's it for me. I mean, I suppose I could use my phone to keep doing YouTube. This little gizmo connected to the local Wi-Fi. It's basically a tiny tablet. It's an older phone. It's not a phone. It's basically a tiny tablet that I use to control my studio lights and things. So I get it. Financial insecurity. What the fuck does that have to do with taxpayer money? And also, I realize she lives in San Francisco, where they do have something resembling healthcare, but if I could get taxpayer funded surgery, not just for reconstructive surgery to repair the things done to me when I was an infant, or to repair any number of other, oh my goodness, there's so many things, but just so I don't die from the injuries I sustained at the hands of transphobes. Because while after that attack, the January before last, the doctors did, keep me from dying. They put my intestines back in, which was, I appreciate. Things have never really been quite right. It continues to get more and more painful. Some days are better than others. I need another. I'm way overdue for it, but I can't afford it. But I'm on a lot of timers at the same time, and it's very disturbing. But that's not what we're here to talk about today. The point is, what taxpayer money is going to what surgeries? Maybe that's the case in California, but it's not everywhere. And we definitely should be doing some medically necessary surgeries to save people's lives. Just saying.
I want to make sure that we're not each in this moment trying to make a persuasive case.
The hardest thing for me, honestly, is just being scared about my children's future.
Okay. And something I didn't ask you to do before, if you're willing to, because it might be easier to just speak as people, is if you're okay with taking your hat off.
I didn't even comb my hair. I can wrap my African thing. I mean, if it's gonna...
Yeah, why don't you try that?
Yeah, okay.
The text says uniforms that express clear loyalty motivate one's own side, but guarantee you'll be dismissed by the other. That can be true. In this case, I'm wearing, it's not exactly a uniform, but it's because it's Trans Day of Visibility. It's important to be visible today, and other days too. But most days, I don't have Eve's style or anything close to it, but I'm more along the Eve side of things. I just wear my clothes.
Okay. What do you call this?
Oh, the head wrap? It's just a head wrap.
But it's traditional, right?
Lesso. Yeah.
Lesso.
Yeah. So
how do you feel wearing it?
It's my crown as a woman, as an African woman.
Oh, interesting. She takes the Trump hat off and suddenly it's her crown. She's herself now. It's almost like the hat was superseding her own identity. Fascinating. And I do agree. That is a much better hat. And I know something about fabulous hats.
And we were taught how to cover our hair, especially when we're praying to God. It's just a sign of respect.
I'd like to go back to part of a conversation about hardest experience that you've had. And in both, these could be related to trans, but I suspect that's not the hardest if we're really to understand you as a human being.
My children's father, he took my children away from me, where he refused for me to come to America with them. They were born here. And so 8 years
Interesting.
of not living with my children and having to travel to Kenya every year, and then having a mom who was battling breast cancer, using all my savings to help her, access cancer care. He was very mean, where he had all these girlfriends and will make them be like stepmoms, where I'll literally beg to see my children. Sometimes I'll travel home, he'll refuse. And so...
So the father had custody, and they stayed with it. I can't... This is boggling me, because, like, her entire identity, aside from MAGA, was being a mom and raising her children, but she didn't actually raise her children, it seems. It's a whole side road. I'm just curious if maybe this is one of those situations where the other parent realized that the person had become extremely unstable. Maybe she was already MAGA, I guess. But also, as Miranda points out, and this is trans people's fault? Why not? Everything else is.
I think it was the trauma of mommy's gone. I don't have my kids.
And then losing her, and then losing your kids at the same time.
Yeah.
And you never want to go back to that place.
It's the only thing I have left. And the weaponization of the education is taking me back. Yeah. So I just don't wake up to fight just for...
It's weaponization of education. The fuck do you even mean, ma'am? And also, are your kids in Kenya or are they with you? What do you mean?
Nothing. There's no point of living if I don't have my kids. Whether it's through dead naming, whether it's them living fake life.
What do you imagine you'd be experiencing if your kids said to you, I'm trans?
A lot of sadness. I think I'll be on drugs to help me just numb my pain.
Because why? What's the pain about?
Because I know who's making profits out of it.
That's not the pain. That's not the pain.
The fuck? The fuck? The what? I'm trying so hard to be sympathetic towards her. I mean, as a mom myself, when I had to go be an over-the-road truck driver, I didn't get to see my kids a lot. Sometimes for long periods of time. I feel that feel. But to turn around and be like, well, if my child became the kind of person that I hate, my biggest issue would be big pharma? What the fuck brain rot is this? Miranda says, yeah, I thought the kids were being indoctrinated by the San Francisco school system, but now they're in Kenya? Like, what is happening?
Pain. That's you looking at the outside world and being angry. But why are you experiencing pain?
I failed as a mom. Failure.
Why?
Because I did not point them to the right direction.
They're not going to be happy?
We're talking about...
And there is the issue. Do you want your child to be happy or to obey? Because these are the two worldviews. This is progressive versus regressive. The regressives are obey, period, even if it harms you. And the progressives are maybe people should maybe have to suffer maybe a little less, maybe. Maybe. It's worth a try.
Permanent surgeries. Right now, the government sponsors. Eventually, they come back and tell me, Mom, it was a mistake. Why does the government come and takes away my children? Why? And weaponize the kids against their parents.
So there's different pieces.
It's not fucking hell. The government isn't weaponizing kids against their parents. Some governments are telling the kids it's okay to be who you are. And their parents are weaponizing their own beliefs and prejudices and preconceptions and often their religions and conspiracy theories against their own children. This is literally DARVO, right? Deny, attack, reverse victim and offender. This is abuser tactics. This is cult tactics. And she doesn't even realize she's doing it.
in this. There's the piece about them suffering that I'm hearing, and that I get. I can feel it for you. Whether you're right or not is another issue.
Right.
But that's your sincere concern. But what about the loss of them?
I will not lose the person, but I lose the child that I always wanted to raise. I think I'll just have.
So it's about you. Interesting.
Like a walking shell.
That the person you know won't be there anymore.
Right.
That they'll still be a person, but they won't be the person you know.
Exactly.
And that will feel like them going away, them dying.
I get what he's trying to get at. He's trying to say, why would you be upset? Why would you grieve, right? But like, here's the thing. Another difference between progressive and regressive is progressives believe that people are people first who happen to have reproductive equipment sometimes. Regressives are like, you are reproductive equipment who sometimes gets to count as a person, you know? So from her point of view as a MAGA person, someone even potentially changing their genitals unpersons you or changes you as a person. But from a progressive point of view, it doesn't fucking matter what's in your pants because you're a person first. Fascinating.
Yeah. They just will not be existing.
I want to ask you the same question.
The hardest experience of my entire life was telling my parents how I felt since I was a child. Telling my parents that every birthday cake I blew out, I wished I was a girl. Since I was a young child, I knew that they wouldn't accept who I am. And I prayed every night for it to go away. I waited for God to take away these feelings.
She did the things that they say, oh, you should have done this. You should have prayed harder. You should have gotten in touch with God. But here's the thing, like every single religious trans person has done this. In fact, most trans people, whether religious or not, prayed at some point, either for the feelings to go away or to wake up as the person they should have been. I can relate to that one as far back as my memories go. Every single night, I wanted to wake up the next morning with the right body. I can't begin to express how now that my body is actually getting there, what a remarkable joy it is to wake up in this body and be me. I've never, ever in my life been happy to wake up as me. But now I have that. Kelly King sends us another super chat for $5. Thank you, Kelly. And says, what is the biggest thing that someone who is an ally can do to support someone who is trans? It depends. As with all things, there is no cut and dried answer. If you want to support a specific someone who is trans, then finding out what they specifically need would be the way to help, right? Like, well, just like supporting any other specific person with whatever their specific situation is. Like a homeless person probably needs food, warm stuff, shelter if you can manage it, these sorts of things. So find out what the specific need is and do your best to help. If you're talking about supporting trans people, generally, advocacy, joining groups, pointing people at trans creators, like we really, really appreciate allies who will stand up to bigots and say that's not cool. The same way any other group appreciates allies. Like when a person is being racist and a white person stands up and says that's not cool. Exactly the same. Appreciate it. But also point people towards trans creators and say, if you have questions, talk to the people who know, who are living that life. Because so often people talk about us without us. And that's an issue too. Support our organizations like Trans Lifeline that we mentioned earlier. I've also got At my store, astropride.com, I've got 2 fundraiser items. One of them supports the Trevor Project, because that's the only way I can do fundraisers at this stage of growth on YouTube. I would like to do real fundraisers, but YouTube hides that button behind the 10,000 subscriber bar. So, subscribe and tell your friends to subscribe so that I can do real fundraisers. But for right now, at astropride.com, there is a shirt called Protect Joy. Proceeds from that go to support the Trevor Project. But also you can directly donate to organizations, or you can directly donate to trans people, because as I've said earlier, a lot of us are struggling. A lot of us are having a very hard time affording food. But also, as Hypatia says, listen. Sometimes just listening, the answers become obvious. There's a lot of things, but there's a few to consider. Additionally, if you want more ways you can help, there's a resources page on my website. It's not just science links. There's another page full of resources for trans people, for GSM people, and for allies. Guides, ways to help, organizations, outreach groups, community groups, all sorts of things. There's a lot of resources there. I put a lot of time into assembling those resources to help people. That's a possible place to look too.
I went to church, I prayed, I read the Bible, and I waited as long as I could. I waited until I was 24, and these feelings never stopped. And
I get that too. I waited as long as I could. Longer than I could, really. My mental health was quite bad by the time I reached the point where I didn't want to stop being alive in an active way, but my life was done. Like, it was pain, it was agony, it was misery just to wake up. The only reason I continued to persist was because people would be sad if I didn't. I didn't want to not be alive aggressively and actively, but I didn't want to be alive anymore either. And that's not true anymore. I have fought harder than I thought. Folks, I served in the United States Navy, and I had to fight. I had to fight to survive after I had to fight. I was a repossession agent for 3 years, and I had to fight. I've been in struggles, in battles, both real and emotional and legal, my entire life. I have never fought like I've had to fight to stay alive this past year and a half. And yet, no fight in my life has ever been more worth it to me. So there's that.
told my parents, and I was met with rejection and hate and revulsion. My dad called me an abomination, and he screamed at me, "You will never be a woman." And in that moment, I knew I was an abomination. I had read the Bible. I had heard my dad talk about trans people and gay people and talk how much he hated me without knowing who I was. And yet I couldn't help but tell him how I felt and lose my entire family.
It's an interesting situation where you reach a point where you cannot go on not being yourself any further. Do you have to tell people? No. Your medical information, your inner feelings, what you need, these are all yours. You can share them if you wish, but you're never under any obligation to. But sometimes, if you know you're going to lose everything either way, sometimes it might seem like it's worth it to try, because sometimes people will surprise you. Sometimes people will espouse bigotry towards a group until it's someone in their family, and then suddenly their tune changes. We see it with Republicans all the time. So many people who pass legislations harming gay people, and then their child turns out to be gay. So maybe it's worth a try. But if you know for sure that you're going to get called an abomination and get kicked out and cut off, no matter what, you don't have to subject yourself to that abuse. You can just go and let them figure out why you never said. My parents were not like that. My parents were more accepting than others in some ways. But here's the thing. When I was a child, and I would say to my parents, something is wrong, I should be a girl, they didn't get it, or they pretended not to get it. I have some suspicions based on what I found out about my medical history later, but that's not important for right now. When I got a little older and I started being exposed to things like the Jerry Springer show or Maury Povich, where they'd have trans people on the show, and I'd say, that's what I'm talking about. That's me up there. I was told, not just by my parents, but other adults, no, that's fiction. People can't really do that. And I learned later on, they knew goddamn good and well that they could, right? Christine Jorgensen made headlines, became a household name in the 1950s for doing exactly that. They knew damn well it was possible. They lied to me when I tried to tell them who I was. So when I finally learned that being a trans person was a real thing that you really could do, I didn't feel any particular pressure to tell them. I did eventually, when I was out literally everywhere else first. And they were accepting. But the fact that I spent my entire childhood telling them who I was, and they told me that's not possible, and when I saw evidence of it, they told me that's not real, I didn't waste my time.
What was it like to lose your family?
It's just a constant nagging pain of being pushed away by the people that I care about the most. And I don't want to be trans. I don't want this life. I wanted to be a man. I tried to be a good boy. I tried. And it reached the point where I couldn't take it. And I got the things together to commit suicide. I mean, I loved my dad and I loved my mom. My dad was my best friend. And to have him look me in the eye and just tell me he hates this person that I am it shattered my entire world.
You told them and they had this your dad.
That can be a rough thing too. I've mentioned before that my dad was an alcoholic. There isn't really a good or a bad alcoholic. There's just an alcoholic, right? But there were times when he was worse than others, as often happens with alcoholics. And at one point in my early elementary school years, he told me he hated me. He didn't think he did, or at least he said he didn't think he did later, when my mother confronted him about it. Because suffice it to say, I was very upset about that. And I couldn't hide it from my mother. And so she confronted him about it, and he tried to change the story, tried to change the situation. Maybe his memory was really off, but whatever. It kind of shattered my poor little child's heart, because your parents are like the one people who are supposed to love you no matter what. And it turns out they're actually just humans like every other human. And sometimes humans suck. I get it.
Had this reaction, and there you are.
Yeah.
How does it end? Does your dad walk away? Do you walk away?
I just remember sitting across the room from both my parents, crying and wanting to be held. This was the start of my parents not loving me anymore for who I am. I knew it was the start of that. I saw in their eyes that they no longer knew me or wanted me because I was now somebody different than who they wanted me to be.
Do you want your child to be happy, or do you want your child to obey? Because if it's the one, you'll be a great parent, even if you fuck up sometimes. But if it's the other, you should never be a parent. We've seen the results of that kind of thing. This is getting very heavy, and it's kind of long. So I think I want to skip a bit. Well, I want to skip quite a lot. I'm tempted to pause it and come back to it another time, but I don't know when that time might be. So I'd rather just like nail things down. So I'll use this most frequently viewed guide to pick a spot and go from there.
I can see how that's terrifying.
There's an app the kids are told to use where they can meet gay and trans partners. Grindr.
They talk about that in school?
Yeah, they're given those options and meeting them at the park.
You feel that you're losing the ability.
I don't think that's true. Again, I'm questioning whether she has children in school right now, because we've gotten mixed stories about that. But even if children are made aware of Grindr, you can't actually use Grindr as a child. The Republicans keep trying super hard. You can't actually do that.
To parent your children, and they're being parented from their school instead.
I think that you connected deeply. Those words really resonated for you, huh?
Yeah.
Yeah, wow.
We are used to using very strong words fighting the people who are taking away our parental rights. And clustering.
This is a big mega dog whistle thing, parental rights. And it's always the people who think children are property and should obey, never mind whether they should be happy. And it's so fucked up, and I don't get it. But that's one of the dog whistles of that side. It's one of the virtue signals. Parental rights. Unless the parents want to use their rights to get their child the health care they need to not die. Well, then the state needs to step in and put a stop to it. The state, like most sane people, is concerned with the welfare of children. If they need to step on parental rights, just like in a case of child abuse, everyone agrees that if a person is abusing their child, the state needs to step in and remove the child from that home. Same thing here. If you're abusing your child religiously, socially, whatever the case may be, because you have a trans child and you're trying to force them to not be trans, the state should step in for the best interest of the child and to potentially save their life. It's exactly the same for exactly the same reasons. But people don't want to hear that because their perspective is children are property and they need to obey.
People like Eve who love who they are, in the same boat. And so, I don't see her as evil. But when I'm doing my advocacy, that's the word that I use.
Yeah.
But it's not supposed to be used on her.
Okay, this section is Eve is listened to her. When our enemy understands us, our heart opens to them.
I feel like we're both being trampled together on different sides.
Yep.
We're both being used as the enemy. I think you have every right to raise your children exactly how you feel, with whatever history and ancestry and religion that you deem necessary. And that makes me really sad to hear. I didn't really know that.
Yeah.
her point of view, the part that we skipped over, is she expresses that she feels like the school is taking away her ability to raise her children in an insular, prejudiced way by exposing them to other ideas and things. Oh heavens. And I get it though, because like how you raise your children is kind of important, because it's that idea of doing a good job, what other people will think. You want your child to be someone you will be proud of, because you can't face the idea of not being proud of your own child. And it gets complicated, but I kind of get it. Brente is here and says, did everyone hear about the Colorado Supreme Court decision? I think most people did. For anybody who didn't, TLDR, the Supreme Court voted 8-1 to not directly legalize conversion therapy, but to strike down a state level ban against conversion therapy, which is a code word for torture. They decided that the state cannot, at least for the reasons in the Colorado case, the state cannot ban torturing children for religious reasons. If it's for religious reasons, torturing children, just fucking fine. Good job, SCOTUS.
Spiritually, emotionally, and I've seen the consequences of parental curse. And every day I pray to God and I say, God, don't let it happen. They deserve a good life. I want to be the best mom. And
so she's worried about how her kids will turn out. She's been culture warred into exactly the pigeonhole MAGA wants her. How is this trans people's fault? Why does she hate trans people over the fact that society is pluralistic and democratic? What the fuck? I realize we skipped over a lot, but I've watched this before.
That's my legacy.
Okay. I want to ask Eve, and then we're going to move to another piece of this. Is there more that you'd like her to understand?
I think what I want you to understand from my point of view is that I was never happy until I accepted who I was.
Meeting Eve, she's a human who wants to be who she wants to be. And I would drink from the same cup as her. I don't see her like this demon that.
Remember where we started? She's a fake woman. She'll never be a real woman. I will never see eye to eye with her. And now, after just this relatively short conversation, granted, it's been edited, she'd drink from the same cup as her. Empathy, compassion, understanding. Even while acknowledging there are some deeply problematic things that some people believe and hold on to and cling to, it still builds bridges. So there's more along these lines. It goes on for quite some time, but we're already much later than I wanted to be today. I know this always happens. Maybe we'll get to this another time. Maybe I'll do a member stream about it. Hey, join memberships and join us on the member streams from time to time. I sometimes do finish up videos that we didn't have time for on a show. I don't know. We'll see. It's a way to support the channel, and you get some goodies back for it. So consider that into the future. But suffice it to say, I wanted to show that no matter how bleak things seem, and the fact that, yes, I'm taking the opportunity to address some of the horrible and harmful points being made, compassion, empathy, there's still hope. Even this MAGA person can take off that hat and put back on her crown and see Eve as a person that she would share the same cup with. It's a start. It's a place to begin building. So even now, on this Trans Day of Visibility, when things seem more bleak than they ever have, at least here in, it was really, really important to show everybody there's still hope. Thank you all so much for joining me. I do this as often as I can when both the time and the ability. We do the morning show that is much more chill, where we learn stuff. Today we did Mary Bowser, a Civil War spy. Tomorrow we're doing Mary the Virgin. Some Mary, there's so many Marys. It's Mary the Virgin as we move into April. Thank you all so much for joining. And as always, try not to die. Mwah. Thanks to all our patrons and top-level members for March. Miranda, Karen Butcher, Jimmy Tux, Ian Shen, Maya Adkisson, Jessica the Transmetal Alchemist, Robin Webster, Lilith, Ember Lynn, The Barely Bearable Atheist, Eric Wander, Jason Jacoby, Lil of All Trades, Deviant Outcast, Secular Feelinist, Geo Sam, Thriver Scapegoat, Katie Bluebird, The Godless Engineer, and Why Because Weed Bro. And you can add your name here next month by signing up at patreon.com/betterthanember or by joining Emberships here on YouTube at the Cinder level, which also includes all the custom emojis, tons of member-exclusive content, member-only live streams, and a bunch of other stuff. I deeply appreciate all the supporters who keep this channel going. Thank you so much. Because of you, we're building a wonderful community that I'm very proud of.